Good afternoon, Rhode Nation. Mark's Remark is back for another week. Back with a new guest, similar sport, as you guys are probably familiar with, another member of the men's soccer team. But this week, I'm joined by junior midfielder and one of the 2023 captains of the men's soccer team, Max Kwitchoff. Max,
Hello.
How you doing this afternoon?
Doing amazing. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Been looking forward to this. Obviously, the men's soccer season probably didn't end on the best note or the note that many people had hoped, but I mean, this is why we're here. Get to talk about the good when we get to also talk about the bad. So, kind of just sort of jump right into it. Before we get into a little bit of your personal past, I'm more curious. Just what are some of your reflecting thoughts on this season? Because I mean, I know you had a bit of a tumultuous one on a personal level.
Yeah. So obviously, mine was rough, with riddled with injuries that didn't seem to go away. But as a team, came in high expectations and just lacked results. I mean, lost some big names. Obviously, Zach Dre, that's been with the program for 5 years. Pat Ogerman, that's obviously gone on to play pro and do extremely well. So battling that is obviously never easy. But with the talent we still have, expected more, to be honest. Expected more from everybody.
I mean, 5-6-5. It's the second season, I believe, with draws being implemented and everything. That was one of the things that Coach Elliott, when I had spoken to him after the end of last year, that was one of the main things that he had said were some of the biggest drawbacks of the season, was you couldn't get that final goal or
100%.
Hold on to
100%.
Hold those late leads. So, I mean, just a difficult season all around. I feel like that coming off of last year, there was obviously, like you had mentioned, there was a decent core that needed to be replaced, especially with Pat being like that main focal point in offense. And this year, it seemed as if that you were taking significant steps to do that. A whole new look team, basically, a number of transfers coming in attack, in midfield, and in defense. I mean, just like, what would you say in terms of the development of the squad after this year? Do you feel like that the squad, even with the missing out in the playoffs and so on, are taking steps in the right direction? Most
definitely. Even though obviously we didn't get the results this year, it was something. You know, it's going to take time to fill in those big names. You know, Dre or Pat, Jordan. It's gonna take a couple of years, but with the talent we've brought in and with the talent that I'm sure the coaches have already been looking at, I have no doubts that we'll be able to fill that void. No doubts at all.
I feel like fans agree as well. I mean, it's always a talented roster. There is never
100%.
really a time where men's soccer doesn't have a plethora of talent at their disposal. So I feel like that you can probably call some of these seasons blips on the radar and such.
Most definitely, yeah, definitely a blip. Because you or I, obviously, we have a really rich history. I mean, 2018, 2019, back-to-back Atlantic 10 champions. So going from that to not making playoffs 2 years in a row makes our team look worse than it is, I think. Because our expectations are just so high year in and year out, no matter who we lose, no matter who we bring in. Our expectation is always that we should be able to compete for an Atlantic 10 championship. But the past 2 years, we have failed to get close, which is where the frustration's coming.
Well, even with the frustration, you take some of these seasons, you take the extra month or so that you get when you don't make the playoffs to really assess the current situation. It gives Coach Elliott and the rest of his coaching staff the ability to kind of just take a look back at the squad, see what truly needs to improve, see if there are any positions that can be improved upon, just like they did last year. And then you bring in like a number of defenders, like you bring in Clark Tozak to really solidify that defense. You bring in another Spaniard like Inigo Exegaray, who is another serious catalyst in the attacking and midfield sort of connection. So, I mean, there were a number of pieces that were brought in, and there was a number of bright spots in this team, but it seemed that even with those bright spots, a lot of it couldn't really come together.
Most definitely, and I think that's just going to be something that comes with time. I mean, we look at the team my freshman year when we went to an Atlantic 10 semifinal. We had been playing together, maybe not me specifically, but that team, our starting 11, had been playing together for a couple years at that point. They were all people that had been through Rhode, seen every team in the A-10 multiple times. And I think that's just something that's going to come with experience for a lot of us.
Oh, absolutely. You can say that for almost every team that's going through transition. It seems to be something that has been kind of a popular theme with athletics at URI in recent years. You look at like teams like men's basketball that are going through a number of transitions as well. So it's all part of the natural growth of things.
Yep.
Exactly.
Sports.
So kind of moving away from the team-centric point of view for a little bit, I want to talk about your role on the team. You were named one of the 3 captains this year. alongside Kevin Castaneda and Vitel Nielsen, both of whom are going to be graduating. Just kind of walk me through what that initial feeling was like. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit with given just sort of your lack of experience per se in alongside those other two, but just what were some of your initial feelings when you were told that?
I mean, obviously, first one is excited. It's always been a dream, become a captain. Every team that I've ever been on, I've been a leader or had that exact captain role. But at a Division I level, it is a completely different task in itself. I was named captain as a 19-year-old when I started junior year. So not only am I young, but I had only started in a handful of games last year, like played some decent minutes last year. Freshman year, I played a couple games. But to go from that to then being the guy that's representing our team, like being the one that everybody looks at when things go wrong, it's difficult, really difficult. And I was lucky enough to have Vetle and Kevin with me as well, so we were able to, discuss things constantly. And with a season that doesn't go so well, you get a lot of fingers pointed at you. So that's obviously not easy. And then battling injury for myself, it's hard to be a captain, guide your team when things are going wrong, but you're also not even on the field. So that becomes a completely different issue in itself.
I mean, so you, looking back kind of your career statistics, 15 games played your freshman year, handful of starts here. Yeah, actually, no. Only one game started your freshman year. And got an assist, though.
Got an assist.
Give you that. You're contributing.
Yeah.
And then next season, your involvement starts to come up. You played in 16 games. You started 7 of them and scored 1 goal. And you clearly made an impression to the coaching staff.
Definitely.
And it was just like a combination of your personality and your maturity as well as the stuff you input on the field. I mean, from your point of view, what do you believe allowed you to be in this position per se?
I definitely think it's my energy and my mindset. I wouldn't say by any stretch of an imagination that I am one of the more talented players on our team. Obviously, I have a couple things in my wheelhouse that I can do better than other players. But my consistency, my energy, my mindset going into every single practice, every single game, puts me on a stool above. That's all. But even little things like practice, I'm always the one getting everybody going, the one bringing the energy, the motivation. I'd say just getting everybody on the same page.
Every team definitely needs that. I remember we were watching you guys earlier in the season. It might have been the Stonehill game. I was watching you guys. It was I think Kevin won a free kick in the defensive half, and you guys were already winning, and it didn't really matter. But you go up to him, you're screaming at him, got right into his face, getting super amped up. And it was just one of those things where it's as someone who's played soccer, I've always wanted to have a captain or teammates that really motivate me and are ones that are celebrating everything. It's those types of guys that really keep you going, and I feel like that's got to be part of the reason and part of the mindset that Coach Elliott had when he had decided to bring you into that fold. Because I mean, you've got a number of other guys that have a plethora of experience as well, and it doesn't take away from their role in the team and such. But I feel like it also allows a bit for a bit more of a connection with some of those younger guys.
Most definitely.
If you've got someone like you as a junior, 19 years old. You may say you're unexperienced, but you look at some of these freshmen coming in, 17, 18 years old, that are no experience.
None.
And so you have someone who's got that leadership role, who has the trust of those coaches, and they can look to him and be like, all right, if this kid's able to get the admiration and such of his peers and his coaches, that'll push me to move forward.
Yeah, I always want to be one of the guys that they look up to. I mean, when I came in, I obviously looked up to a couple of players that I thought had consistent energy. I mean, Zach Dreyer was one of them. I mean, every single game, week in, week out, the kid wanted to win. So I love when they look up to me. I love constantly being with them. I mean, there have been multiple times where we'll just go out to eat because it's I want to be the one that they go to whenever something's going wrong. I want to be the one that they remember when my time here is done. I want to be a role model for them in any way I possibly can.
And it's quite admirable to have that mindset. I feel like you see a lot of people that are in sort of similar positions or on programs like this at your age that don't really have that mindset necessarily. And it's something that obviously comes with time, but to have already kind of established that just kind of shows your character. So I want to continue to turn the clock back a little bit further. Growing up in New York, small town just outside of Buffalo, we were talking about this before the show, probably as far away in New England as you could possibly get from URI. You were a part of Empire Academy or Empire United.
Empire.
That was a U.S. Development Academy, part of the MLS Next system,
Yep.
and so on there. But you were coached by a former Ram.
Yep.
And so just kind of tell me about your experiences under him, and then just how that probably we talked about the connections you had with URI, but just some of how that may have propelled you to look at URI a little
Most
bit
definitely. So not only did he go to URI, but he's also one of my favorite coaches that I've ever had. So if he was a terrible coach, I would have never even turned an eye at URI. But not only is he a fantastic player and coach, but he's also a great person. I mean, like, I love that guy with my entire heart. So then it made me think, okay, well, if he turned out like this, maybe I want to, look at a similar school. And then we had Zach Dreyer, Josh Can. We've had a couple other players come here. And not only does it fit my technical ability, my soccer skill, but I love the school. I love everything about it. So it just kind of made sense for me.
And so was URI one of the only schools you were looking at? Did you field any other offers from other programs?
Yeah, so I actually had a bit of a weird recruiting process. So junior year, obviously going through it normally, went on a handful of tours, went to URI, UNH, UVM, Colgate. There was a couple others. And then I received an offer from URI, UNH, and Navy. Okay? And then COVID hits. So then I'm like, well, don't know what I'm going to do now. Because when that hit, it was just like, I might not play soccer again for 2 more years.
Like everything just
completely shuts down. So I go from constantly emailing coaches, constantly on the phone, to essentially nothing. So then obviously a bit of, I wouldn't say panic, but a bit of stress comes on because you're like, well, I've got these 3 offers, so do I wait and search for something better and take a chance, or do I want to go with something that I know will not only fit me, but I'll have a good time there as well? So I looked at those 3, and URI seemed like the best fit for me, and I wouldn't have made a different decision.
How excited was Coach Tenka when you had gotten the URI offer?
Incredibly excited. He loves it every single time. Whenever anybody goes, I mean, even when we're at practice, he's always talking about, hey, somebody should go. He's always bringing up, I went to URI. So when he sees another player that, he likes, go there. It's a big moment for him.
And so then you come to URI as a freshman. Like I said, you had made 15 appearances during that run to the Atlantic 10 semifinals. Mm-hmm. You were a part of a program that was star-studded in terms of regional and national promise. I mean,
incredible.
You look at guys like Patrick Ajiman. Yeah. I feel like every time I talk to different members of the program, there's a different story.
Yeah,
exactly. It's someone that everyone has something different to say. I mean, just like you had the opportunity to play with him for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Just what were some of your experiences with him? Just like what were some of the things that you got to learn about him and so on?
Yeah. So not only is he an incredible player, he's also an incredible guy. I mean, I absolutely love the guy. But I have never played with a guy who is so talented. I mean, there would be games where we would be getting outplayed. But if you were to clear a ball 60 yards up the field to either side, and he gets there first, something is going to happen. I've never been with a player that has ever, single-handedly been able to man his way through a team. It's actually incredible to watch. It's incredible to play with. There are some times where he loves scoring goals, so he's a little selfish in front of goal, as he should be. But I've never been with a player who can do stuff like that. It's incredible.
And it was fascinating, when I had the opportunity to talk to him at just before the MLS draft, I did a little bit of an interview with him kind of talking about his experiences, and we kind of touched upon just that sort of COVID environment as well, because it played a serious impact during that coming into 2021. You still didn't really know, and just coming out of high school, coming out of COVID, having been sort of, I don't know, used to those experiences per se, living during the pandemic, playing during the pandemic, and then kind of jumping into a program with some of these guys at a high level. Yeah. How was that transition for you, and how helpful were some of those guys like Pat who have sort of been there before?
Yeah. I'd be lying if I say it wasn't scary. I mean, obviously, the first 2 weeks of training, you're like, oh my God, not only is this incredibly difficult, but these kids can play. I mean, when you're playing at a high school level, there's always a drop-off. I mean, you have the top 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys, and then, it drops down to kids that are going to go D3, D2. But as soon as I came into URI, I thought about it like this. no matter what team they make when we play 6v6 in training, it is a game every single time. It doesn't matter who's on whose team. It doesn't matter if you play starters versus non-starters. Does not matter. Every single kid at the Division I level can play well.
Well, it also kind of is a testament to the balanced roster that they're trying to create and that competitiveness, because you got to give credit to the coaching staff where they instill that that character in all of you, where it's like, all right, no spot is sacred. No spot is going to be held. I mean, especially you look at this year, which we'll touch upon later. I mean, when I saw the first starting lineup I saw of the season, I recognized maybe 5 names.
Yeah, it's
so
incredible.
It's incredible. Crazy. But you got to give credit to the coaching staff for really instilling that culture of competitiveness and that, yes, you are all a family, but you can't settle. It's always competing.
Yeah. Even in practice, you're my friend, but you also might take my spot. So it's consistency. Every single day we go out, you're fighting to start on the weekend, 100%.
And so kind of just touching on your freshman year again, you're a part of that team. You're making appearances, substitute appearances, coming off the bench as the team is really picking up some steam, making its way into the Atlantic 10 playoffs. As a freshman and your first ever taste of college soccer, I mean, just what was that experience like? Not necessarily riding the bench for a bit of a playoff run, but still being somewhat involved.
Yeah. Terrifying. I mean, the first time I went on the field, my first ever game I played in, I just remember being like, it's so fast, it's so loud. There's fans, which I had never had fans before. So it was a lot to take in. But obviously, you play one game, you play another, you settle down. Your heart rate slows down. You can play like yourself again. But for those first couple games, you're basically like a chicken with your head cut off. I mean, you're frantic. You're trying to do what you know, but there's so many things going on, you can barely focus on the game.
Especially playing in midfield, too.
And
you play one of the most stressful and strenuous positions 100%. You could possibly do. That midfield enforcer, like dropping in front of the defense, like that box-to-box role. And I mean, just getting thrown into the fire, per se, as a freshman, I mean, that must have... Like, I can only imagine what would be going through your head, being like, difficult. Oh, God, the second I make a mistake, it might be over.
I'm lucky to say that I was playing behind Jordan Kandua, who was a really good role model for me. I think we play very similar soccer. So watching him day in and day out, I was able to kind of follow what he does, because obviously he succeeded at Division I level. He's led us on that run. So using him as a tool helped a lot.
Yes, that was kind of going to be my next question. Just like as you're making your way through, you're maturing through this program, like the first year or so, who were some of the guys, like outside of like Jordan and Pat, that you kind of looked to maybe model your game after, or just look to as just some sort of role model in order to like stay focused and stay sort of level, flat-footed in a way?
Without a doubt, Stefan Schmidt. My freshman year, our goalie, the best player I think I've ever played with, along with Pat. He was incredible, and he was the biggest worker on the field, off the field. He was absolutely incredible whenever it came to that. So looking at him, I was able to be like, I want to end up like him in 4 years. I want some kid to look up to me when they're a freshman and think the exact same thing. So using him as like an example helped tons.
Was there ever like a language barrier between some of you and the guys? I know Stefan coming over from Germany. Yeah. There was the amount of international talent on the squad has obviously increased over the past couple of years. But I mean, has there ever been like a bit of a language barrier when you're trying to work with some of these guys?
It's funny because they all come in at different levels. So like Rafa, very good English now, came in, didn't understand a word, right? and then you're playing soccer with them, and you're saying words to him, but you're just kind of getting like a blank stare back. So it obviously makes you laugh a little bit.
Got to incorporate a lot of pointing. Like, hey, no, you got to have the win. Get that way.
But it's super interesting to see their development, to be honest. I mean, even like Rodrigo this year came in, is okay, but I think constantly being around him, constantly like helping him out, stuff like that, it's cool to see. Like they end up being very good at English, every single one of them. So.
It's funny because you, as you're trying to teach them English, I feel that they're picking up the subtle nuances of what you're talking about. Like you start to get the context. Yeah. Do you find yourself ever learning some of their own languages?
A little bit, all the time actually. So much so that when I actually visited Rafa in Spain this summer, and I was like trying my best to like put myself in an uncomfortable situation just to see like how much I could do if I could handle it. And he definitely taught me a thing or two. So as much as I taught him, he also taught me.
Has playing with any of these players motivated you to possibly learn a language just for like the future? I feel
100%.
I feel like some people would take that, like playing with some of the guys from like Norway and Denmark and stuff, is like, all right, now this is kind of cool. Like I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit of
cool.
Danish.
And I don't even think it's just beyond cool. I think it's incredibly impressive. I mean, they're coming to a fairly good university, URI, very good university, and taking every single class in a different language is incredibly difficult. So it's admirable, to be honest. So I would love to. I'd love to. I like saying it right now, but will I do it? Maybe, maybe not. But it was definitely something that I want to do.
And probably a good life skill to have, 100%. Especially if you stay in the sports world. I know that I'm like right now I'm trying to study French because it's just good to have that extra language where it's like you never know what opportunity could happen, and you never know, some athletes could be talking to you that only speak French or something like that. And so I want to kind of go back to another comment you had just made about the fans. I remember my freshman year we had our little Rhode Mafia student section hanging out down at the far end of the URI soccer complex, really cheering you guys on. And I came from another small high school in Connecticut where it's a lot of the times midweek games, like early afternoon games, you didn't have any fans.
No one's out.
And so I want you to kind of just expand a little bit on how big of an impact the fans were at the start for you, and then just as you've kind of grown and as more fans have started to really take a notice to this team, how it's impacted you over the past few years.
Yeah, it's huge, actually. And when I was in high school, Empire Academy doesn't allow you to play high school soccer. So the games that we were playing on the weekends essentially had nobody. We'd have like a couple parents and some college scouts, and the place was empty, quiet. So to go from that to my first game, like not only like getting heckled, but like also getting cheered for, it's incredible. I love it every single day when we go out and there's fans. It makes my day.
What do you think is a more tense atmosphere, having 3 parents and a couple college scouts, or having 1,000 fans?
It's weird because they're very similar. Having a college scout is extremely stressful when you know, oh, he's here to watch me play. I have to play good today. But there's something about hearing 1,000 people all roar or scream at the same time that is unbelievable. There's nothing like it.
It's funny because as someone who's like played soccer, I've never played in front of a crowd like that before, but it's like everyone watching you has an expectation when they come to the game.
Yep.
The college scouts have an expectation of trying to see you play well in terms of measuring your ability, whereas the freshmen who are just walking out of Butterfield trying to find something to do, they want to see a good game, and they want to see you or I win. So it's funny, like you're dealing with very similar expectations, but they're looking at it through completely different lenses.
Yep, completely different.
And I mean, just like as having started that fan group, that was one of the reasons how I made so many friends at URI was going to watch you guys and do that. And it was funny because as the games sort of went on, and even as it got colder, you just saw more and more people showing up.
I love that.
It was, oh my God, it was so fun. I mean, even this year, Providence game, 2,100 people.
Yeah. One of the best feelings of my entire life. It's too bad the game didn't end in our favor. But even going out there and you win a tackle, or you win a header, and the crowd yells, that is the best feeling in the entire world.
So I mean, you usually hear people discuss like playing in an Ocean State rivalry when you're talking like basketball, and more recently football because of the fact that Bryant plays. But soccer plays Providence and Bryant almost every year. It's just part of the schedule now. As someone who's now played both, what's that experience like lining up against those two teams?
It's so interesting because when I came in, everybody was like, "Oh, we hate Providence. We hate Bryant," and I was like, "I could care less. I've never been in Rhode Island. I don't grow up here." But talking to the guys in Rhode Island, they're talking about they had gone to those games since they were 6. Every single year, they would go out and they'd pick players that they loved. They'd get signed jerseys and stuff like that. And now, speaking as a junior, I hate both of those programs. I absolutely hate both of those programs. It's crazy how much of a Rhode Islander I've become. But those games are something special. Something special without a doubt.
It's like you've got the pride as a student at the forefront where it's like you want nothing more than URI to be the best program in the state. But then it adds a whole nother level to it when you're the one on the field trying to make that happen. And it's like, I mean, I have to imagine that it's all usually professional at the end of the day when you're talking to some of these guys and so on. But I mean, hey, but it does get a little chippy though.
It gets chippy.
Kind of tell me a little bit about the Providence game this year. I mean, that was Little dicey tackle from Hofsteffer.
Beyond chippy. First of all, he's an idiot. So
Michael, we know we hope you're listening to that because we hope you heard that because that was a crazy
tell him
tackle.
To his face. He claims he didn't step on him. He stepped on him. So then we're playing down a man, and that's when it gets even chippier because you need to act like we have 11 people. We're gonna fight even harder. So then, like even me, Yvonne gets into it sometimes. But that is the stuff that I live for. I love those kind of games. They get chippy. They're gross. You know, it's like less soccer and more just like who can be crazier today.
Yeah.
But those are the most fun ones to play in.
Well, that's a sort of midfield general personification I sort of gave you when I was telling some people about this interview. I was like, this is, if you haven't gone to watch URI men's soccer and you want an idea about who Max Kwitchoff is.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll hear me 5 minutes in.
Exactly. But just a midfield general. I mean, there were a couple phrases you probably couldn't say on WRIU that come to mind. Yeah. But you just think about it. It's like you're like that holding guy. You're that anchor that goes up and down, that little bit more physical N'Golo Kante type of role.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you watch the URI Providence game. Most people, when they think of URI Providence, you think of basketball. Those are the two main sports that the schools have to offer. That's where you think all the energy is. But no, it matters just as much whether you're playing soccer, softball, track and field.
Everything.
All matters.
Everything.
And it's just like, it even matters from a fan perspective. I mean, like I said, it was over 2,100 people packed into the URI soccer complex.
Which is small.
In those rinky-dinky stands.
Tiny stands.
Tiny stands. And it's just unbelievable just to show how much the program has grown too. Because I mean, you talked about just for the first time really seeing fans as a freshman. And when I started coming as a freshman, before I truly got involved in the sports journalism landscape here, I was noticing just a little bit of the fandom at URI soccer games because I was like, all right, there's a decent amount of fans here. Not like some of the southern schools down like the top 25 programs and so on. And so then I was honestly a little impressed. And then as next year comes, sophomore year, more people. And I'm like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah, that's the part that's really sad is that freshman year we did incredible. Tons of people coming out, enjoying it, and then the expectations are so high. And then we let them down sophomore year. And now it's junior year, I feel like we let them down again. So it's going to be difficult to get that consistency back, to get that trust back, I'd say, between us and the local soccer community of Rhode Island. But have faith. Have faith.
I do want to touch upon the expectations and just how last season and this season went. But I mean, something that I've noticed is that you still consistently get more and more fans as people come on. So I feel like that even with the expectations, people still care a great deal about you guys to the point where they'll come out and watch you even if you guys are like
losing, pouring rain.
I mean, you look at the men's basketball team last year and the year before.
Even though they're losing, they're still getting.
Well, no, not even that. I honestly, like, in terms of the per capita fans, or like the amount of fans you get on average, like when we would go to men's basketball games last year and the year before, as the team really started to dissipate, the student section of the Ryan Center would go from like 1,000 or a couple thousand to like 8 people. Yeah. Like my freshman year, senior day for men's basketball, there were 20 people in the student section.
That's insane.
Exactly, and it's men's basketball.
And we probably had 20 as well.
No, but for what it's worth, though,
it should be.
But for men's soccer, it's consistently driving up a crowd.
Yeah.
Where it's like when men's basketball, when they've continued as they've sort of declined over the past couple of years, they're obviously looking to really bounce back as you guys were. It's just it seemed that more people were inclined to go to men's soccer games, and more people seemed to care to go to those because you guys consistently put up such a great fight.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you were getting blown out every game. No. I mean, we're going to talk about the Bryant and Dayton game a little bit.
A couple blowouts. But
it was never, there were never games that were truly where you guys were getting destroyed. And I feel like that's another testament.
A big factor.
Yeah, it's another testament about like how you guys are moving in the right direction because you're close in every single game. Every game is very close, and that's what keeps people from 100%. Leaving. They want to stay and watch this because it goes until the very end.
Yeah, one that comes to mind this year is Fordham. I mean,
exactly.
We're essentially last place in the league. They're 24th in the nation, and we win at home. I mean, it literally on any given day can go either way.
St. Louis last year, the 3-2
was
win.
Unbelievable.
Like it's those types of results that it seems like they're more common with you guys.
Yeah.
That is what really keeps people engaged with your
I agree.
program. And I feel like that's something, whereas like
It's unique to soccer.
exactly, it's unique to soccer, but it's also unique to you guys.
Yep.
And you look at this season where it's like, this is exceptionally disappointing. The seniors are going to be graduating. They're like upset that this season obviously didn't go the way.
Fell short.
But you look at the overarching picture. You look at the community that's been created here. I have never witnessed a soccer community like this in my life. I just haven't.
Yeah.
And you look at, like, I would say to some of my friends being like, hey, do you want to go to like the football game? You want to go to the basketball game? Some of my friends are more or less like, maybe, like, especially football. It's like, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But when I say, hey, let's go to a soccer game, more than likely I'm going to get people to go to the game because it's always competitive.
Always. Yep.
Smash and grab, rough tackles, like a lot of action. And that's the sort of product that you guys put forth that really makes it so fun to watch.
I think it's our play style as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a doubt. I mean, like, not only are we kind of gritty and, talk a lot on the field, but we score like goals.
All gas, no brakes.
Yeah,
That's what it is. It's
all gas.
Playing out from the defense, just bombing the ball forward.
Yeah, well, you're not going to see us like pass through a team very much, but we will score some ugly goals. Which are the best ones in my opinion.
Oh no, those are hands down the best because especially those ugly goals sometimes come at the most inopportune moments.
Exactly.
Like even like the St. Louis game last year when Jiggy scored. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Me neither.
Impossible. Let's call him Jiggy because I know that's the nickname that you guys have for him. But I mean, he scores with 10 seconds left against one of the best soccer programs in the country. And I mean, just talking about that, you mentioned how Fordham are top 25. I mean, you just got to talk about St. Louis. For you guys that don't really follow Atlantic 10 men's soccer, I need you to understand, I have never seen a program that is so dominant in both men's and women's soccer at the same time than St. Louis. I mean, St. Louis women's soccer won 5-0 in the semifinals of the A10 championship this year to go to the final. I think the final might be today.
I think it's either today or tomorrow.
I'm definitely going to be looking at that because they're ridiculously good. But I mean, like, again, it's a testament that you're able to grind out a result against St. Louis, who are consistently ranked.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable.
And it was the year before that where they made a run to the Elite Eight, NCAA. So at that point when we played them, we were okay. But they were ranked like 15th in the nation. And then on top of that, that's probably my favorite game of soccer I've ever played in. It was my first start at home. Pink jerseys, fans, pouring rain. I felt like a rock star a little bit. But that was unbelievable. It just goes to show how crazy soccer is.
Oh my God!
Especially collegiate soccer.
Collegiate soccer is one of the most underappreciated sports that the U.S. has to offer.
Yeah.
Easily one of the most underappreciated. So, going into just sort of last year, at the end of last year, basically the same position you guys are now.
Yeah, very similar.
Missing out in the playoffs. I mean, last year was awful because it was that last game against Dayton. You lose 2-0 at home against Dayton. Every other result that could have gone wrong went wrong. It was just a brutal look.
Brutal.
And so, doing my sort of research into you guys last year, spoke to Coach, spoke to Pat, kind of talked about how this next coming year was going to be a year of reshaping the roster. You lose Zach, you lose Pat, you lose Jordan, you lose a lot of those guys, and you're trying to think, all right, how are we going to operate as more of a cohesive unit? We don't want to be one-dimensional, because not saying that Pat is by any means one-dimensional, but teams can prepare when you've got such a prominent linchpin up front. So, and then when I spoke to Coach Elliott, he was talking about how big of an impact the transfer portal was going to be. And I mean, it was one of the biggest ones. I mean, I'm going through the roster right now. You look at guys like Nikos Klars-Tozak. You look at guys like, hold on, we're going to keep going here. You look at Inigo Exegaray, Joseph Mwamba, and it's just like
Rodrigo is a transfer as well.
Rodrigo is a transfer, exactly. And like even like Brandon Birmingham, another
Edu.
Yeah. All of these guys coming into this roster, no names to some of the URI community, instantly thrown into the starting 11. And it's just like, I mean, even like Brandon Birmingham, he didn't start initially, but toward the end of the year was playing lights out.
Yeah, he is unbelievable. He's
unbelievable forward. A guy, a lot of similarities to Pat that I've seen, and it's just, he's going to be disgusting next year. Confident in that.
Without a doubt.
But I mean, it's just, you look at the first starting 11 of the year, and it's
a completely
different roster. And it took me by surprise, because I was like, all right, there's still a number of guys that didn't graduate, that stayed. Not a lot of guys transferred out that I was like, wow, wait a minute, like, where do these guys go?
Yeah.
And But, I mean, at the start of the year, it seemed like everything was...
It was
sort
unbelievable.
of picking up, yeah.
I mean, up until Providence, we hadn't conceded a goal or lost a game.
I mean,
And even our result against Providence, although it was a 2-1 loss, heartbreak, we played exceptionally well.
Well, and you conceded an 89th minute winner down a man.
Yeah,
like
down a man.
Exactly. So, I mean, just kind of going through this, you tied Northeastern in an exhibition.
Yep.
You played Merrimack in an exhibition, you won. You played UConn in an exhibition, you won.
Which was huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
UConn is
so at that
UConn
point,
no
we're going
slouches.
into the season rolling.
Exactly.
Rolling.
Quinnipiac, you tied 0-0. That was a bizarre game.
Weird game.
That was a
red
weird
card.
Game. Nate came up big. Di Loretto, he
D'Lo
came up big there.
Yep. Edu got sent off in the first half. But even
first
still,
test of overcoming adversity.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so then you go, first home game, Stonehill, 3-0 win. Kind of an expected result, but a big one in front of the fans for the first.
Score a couple goals. Yeah.
Exactly. Tied against Harvard.
Who are a very good opponent.
Exactly.
Away at Harvard is not an easy thing.
Yeah, they're a competitive program. And then you come into Providence, 2,000 people there, you lose 2-1. I feel like that when you look, a lot of people are going to look at that result, like outside of the Dayton and the Bryant result, as like the more difficult ones to deal with.
Yeah.
But when you really, if you were there and you watched that game,
the energy
you'd
was
understand that the energy that the fans were putting out was one thing, but the energy that you guys were putting out in your own footy,
it was a war.
It was a war, and it was the epitome of what the Ocean State rivalry is.
Exactly.
That's all it was.
Perfect. I mean,
so,
for a fan's perspective, it was goals, red card, bickering, fights,
oh my God, it was
big
just,
tackles. I mean, it's exactly what you want to see in a soccer
exactly.
game.
It was electric.
Yeah.
But even so, that game, difficult pill to swallow, but not the end of the world.
Nope.
You go, Central Connecticut game gets canceled. You play Holy Cross. Holy Cross was a 1-0 win, but I feel like that game was like the beginning of stuff starting to fall apart.
And at that point, I wasn't playing against Holy Cross, and I believe somebody else. It might have been Jiggy was also injured.
I don't think he played. You're right. Yeah.
Somebody else was injured, and then it was like
I think Mwama got hurt during that game too because he had played.
And Yvonne got hurt, I believe.
So it was a win.
It was a win,
but
and then we're more injured, and we're like we didn't really deserve to win that one today.
Yeah, it was.
So then there's doubts, and then we got big games coming up, and then
we go into the
slippery slope.
Go into the next. You play 2 games in 3 days. Concede a total of 10 goals. You play Dayton.
Never seen before.
Yeah, you play Dayton away at Dayton.
Dayton away is extremely difficult. First of all, they're a very good opponent, and for some reason they decided to play their best game of the year against us consistently.
Well, I mean, you look at last year, the 2-0 win here, basically knocking you guys out of playoff contention, and then you go to this. But again, you got to look at it with a bit of take yourself back, look at the full scope, a boatload of injuries. You look at Nick Rockwell getting promoted.
Getting a start.
He came to my house recently. We were having a bit of a party for over Halloween weekend, and he came and I got to talk to him for a little bit and just hear kind of his opinion on all of that stuff. Can you imagine being a manager, having played soccer and played at a high enough level to where you can play as a manager, be a practice player, and so on, and then something out of a movie, you're all of a sudden called up out of nowhere to go play against one of your bigger Atlantic 10 rivals, and just he told me like it was a feeling unlike he's ever felt in his entire life.
I mean, I think about the first time I played, but I knew I was going to play. I mean, I was a roster player, like everything. I was on the team, but he really got thrown into it within the course of a week of you're not on the team to you're playing in our next game.
And he played 20 minutes. It's not even like he played.
Yeah,
like he played 20 minutes. Amount of time. Like I was talking to the sports information director for you guys, and he was talking about just how frantic it was to get him registered. Yeah. Like they had to register him like 2 hours ahead of the game.
Yeah, he didn't even have a jersey.
Exactly. So just the fact that when you look at it, it's obviously a 6-0 loss. You can't really make any excuses for that. But you look at just the full picture of what was going on. You see that you had a manager come up and play and everything else.
I remember watching that game on my couch in my house. Me, Yvonne, Mike Tavares sitting next to each other, and it's like, well, us 3 aren't there, so things are going. This is a tough one.
Yeah, it's
before the game even started. We're kind of giving each other like a look.
This could be a bad one.
This could be a bad.
Because I mean, you're talking 2 of the 3 like bona fide starters at this point, and it's like. And then you go to Bryant. I had Rob Villanueva on the show a couple weeks ago. He was very, very animated about this Bryant game. The fact that they are old, average age of 25,
is unbelievable. Unheard of in college soccer.
Not
even sure if it's legal.
I don't think that's unheard of in almost every college sport, period.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, I had Kasim Hill come on the show the other day. He's a seventh-year senior. So it's like, when you look at football and sometimes basketball, you get those occasional guys where it's like, all right, they've been here for a while, injuries, eligibility.
Shirts,
yeah, exactly. You never see a full team of people that average. Like, there was a 28-year-old center attacking
Which
mid.
is unbelievable. Playing against our 19-year-old center defensive mid who was filling in for me.
Yeah, so it's like you look at that.
The odds are against.
Yeah,
the odds are against.
And even so, Bryant at that point were 7-0, had conceded like one goal.
Consistently, they're still balling out.
Yeah, and it's like the thing is that I don't know. This result was surprising to me because Bryant never struck me as a team that was overly competitive, and they
haven't been until this year.
Exactly.
So, new coach and brought in, I believe this is close to that number. I believe 15 players.
A lot of them were from Spain.
A lot of them from Spain, and a lot of them from Franklin Pierce, where he coached previously.
And yeah.
So they know his playing style, and it's his guys that are going out on the field.
Yeah.
So it's super annoying and like terrible to watch, but they're good.
And so as you obviously didn't play, but as one of the captains, when you guys go in for training the next day, after you have that demoralizing of like a 4-day stretch, how are you trying to kind of keep everybody focused on what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I can bring as a captain. So Vetley and Kevin, or Vetley especially, does the talking when things go wrong most of the time. So I'm kind of the one to bring everybody back. I mean, our soccer season, we always say, it's so quick you need short-term memory loss. There's no point in showing up the next day for training just thinking, we suck. There's no point to this. So keeping everybody going is huge, but it's just like a mindset. I mean, get everybody going. Just be happy. If I'm able to go in with a positive mindset as, an upperclassman captain, then every freshman can also do it, and then every sophomore can do it. So just be an example, I'd say.
And so then sort of leading by example, you're trying to really start to pick up results. You get a draw with LaSalle. That was the next game.
It's okay.
I remember when I was discussing it with Rafa, he was like, we need to get a result. Just something. It needs to be something. And I mean, positive. A draw is something. It's positive.
It's positive.
But then you lose to St. Louis. It's another game where it's like, you got some injuries.
And that one was a tough one because I was coming back, Yvonne was coming back, so we played like the first 20 minutes and like the last 20 minutes. I thought we completely competed the entire game, did not rate their team very highly, but on paper, it's a 2-0 loss away.
Yeah, so it's you when you
although
look at that,
we feel like it's a step in the right direction, again, it's like we fell out on points.
Yeah.
So it's hard to stay, it's super hard
it's
to stay
difficult.
positive.
And I mean, you look, the 4-2 loss to George Mason, that one also stings. Hurts a lot, because George Mason are another team where it's like
not great.
Yeah,
and not having a good year, and not historically
exactly
a difficult opponent.
Exactly, but the next two games were pretty fun.
Crazy.
Number 25 Fordham, 1-0 win, smash and grab win.
Smash and grab.
That just as someone, as just a captain, as a leader on the team, being a part of that celebration afterward, knowing the past 4 weeks were basically hell. Well, how relieving was that?
Incredible. For once, you're not getting fingers pointed at you, and they're actually, it's a hug for once. It is the best feeling. I mean, obviously, in the back of our heads, we still know this is just one game. We need to have this consistency for the rest of the year. But for once, it was like some weight off our shoulders. For once, we can go into practice the next day, and everybody's actually wants to be there.
Yeah. And so then, immediately after that, was a very peculiar game.
Strange.
This was my first ever game I did play-by-play commentary for.
Really?
UMaine Fort Kent. For people who are not aware of where that school is, UMaine Fort Kent is a USCAA school. Mm-hmm. It's a JUCO school 18 minutes south of the Canadian border in the northernmost portion of Maine. My roommate is from Maine, and he says that it is a bilingual county where students who are like in high school there take 3 weeks off to farm.
I've heard that.
So you were talking a program that is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so obviously extenuating circumstances allowed this game to happen. Having the one of their players was the son of one of the Rhode Island's greatest all-time players, all-time top goal scorer. His name is slipping me a little bit. I should remember him because I had to say it so many times. But so you go into that game kind of knowing your opposition. How, like, when you're training, like, what's the training like?
It was interesting because I'm not going to say they're a bad opponent. We thought they were going to be very good. We had looked at their record. We obviously don't know what teams they're playing, but we look at their roster. A team of strictly internationals and like 2 kids from Maine.
Like all Jamaicans.
All Jamaicans. So we're going in. We're like, this is not going to be an easy game. Come to find out, they're not the best team in the world.
I mean, like,
and I don't want to like talk bad about them at all because they were thrown into.
It's 2 different worlds, though. You look at it like, they were the number 1 team in the country for their division, I believe, last year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're comparing basically like a D5 school
to
a D1.
Yeah.
And a competitive D1 school.
Yeah, very good.
So
D1.
it's like, it obviously not to put them down in any sense, but they are very out of their depth. Entertaining game, 8-1, 8-1 score.
8-1.
I mean, just as do you feel that sort of opponent, that sort of game was a good game to have as the senior night, just given what had been going on the past few weeks?
I think so. It was nice to get everybody on the score sheet. You need your goal scorers to keep scoring goals. So in an 8-1 win like that, everybody gets on the score sheet. It's important to have an easy win every once in a while. You can't always have Fordhams, you know. So it's okay, I'd say. For a senior night at home, lots of fans, I thought it was perfect.
Yeah, and so then hopefully the idea was to use it as a springboard for the final 4 games of the year. For what it's worth, you kind of did.
We did.
VCU, 3-1 loss.
Mm-hmm.
Very
good opponent.
Very good opponent.
They
VCU
went on to win the conference.
Perennial
regular season.
Perennial contenders every year, so it's no slouch.
Right.
But then, I mean, you finish the year, draw, win. Draw 0-0 with Brown, draw 0-0 with Loyola Chicago, and then obviously the Loyola Chicago draw put you guys out of contention.
Yeah.
But then kind of knowing what's going on, knowing that there really isn't anything else that can happen, you go and win 2-0 at Davidson.
At Davidson.
At Davidson. Davidson are usually a competitive team.
And we're doing very well this year.
Exactly.
Our win against them kicked them out of first place.
That's
which
fantastic.
is just hilarious.
That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, so then basically just once the season's over, you obviously are losing. You miss out in the playoffs, but to get a win like that at the end, just how's that feel?
Great. And I think it shows us what we were capable of. I mean, a win with Fordham and a win against Davidson shows us that we were a team that had enough talent to compete. It's just that some games we weren't on the same page. I think that's what it really comes down to.
And I mean, so just kind of sort of expand on that. I mean, like when you look back at this season, you kind of you look back at the results. There were some great ones. There were some really bad ones. Obviously, injuries play a serious role in it, just as they did last year. Yep. But how about just what do you think were some of the reasons why it didn't really go the way you planned?
So I think when things went bad to start, we had really bad reactions. I think we kind of started pointing fingers faster than we should have. We didn't own up to it. And then what it really came down to, I hate to say it, but playing Dayton and Bryant back-to-back killed us. That killed the energy in the locker room. It killed the energy from everybody. It killed our hope, our spirit. So that was kind of like a nail in the coffin. But on top of that, I think there was just some games. A whole new group is hard to play with, obviously. So first year for a lot of these guys who did start is difficult. I mean, we have no chemistry, essentially. We've only been training together for a couple months. So that's difficult. I think, opposing mindsets. There was a couple other little factors, but just not being on the same page.
And so not being on the same page, that lack of chemistry, are all factors that either deteriorate or improve with time.
Yep.
And so now you all have an extra month off to kind of ease into your off season a little bit, decompress from the year, and now looking forward. Obviously, the players and coaches have 2 different ways of looking at this. Yep. We spoke about this a little bit. You're interested in trying to get a medical red shirt because of the hamstring injury.
Yep.
I mean, obviously that's going to impact if it's granted, because we
Yep.
never know with the
Never know.
NCAA.
Yeah.
But just, I mean, like, looking forward, what are you looking forward to for next season? Obviously, now as the sole remaining person of the leadership core from
Yep.
this year, and as going to be one of the few truly veteran guys in the team, like, what are you going to be looking forward to?
I'm sorry. I think we have tons of talent. So I am truly excited for kids like Burmo and Jiggy to shine. Obviously, we know the potential that they have, but I think next year, as them being upperclassmen, me being upperclassmen, I think it's going to be a time for a lot of players who were good to be great. I think they're going to be exceptional next year. And I think that's the main thing that's going to be our little catalyst into being a contender again.
And so you had kind of touched upon it from the past couple of seasons about how high fan expectations were and in dealing with those.
Yep.
When you guys impose expectations on yourselves, because like every team, every person I ever interviewed was always like, no, we're always focused on the team. We're always together, like always whatever. It's a lie. Everybody's got their own expectations and goals and so on. But for you, having now had these past 2 seasons where it's been less than ideal, what are your own personal expectations for yourself going into next year and your expectations for the team as a whole?
Yeah, I want to be the best leader possible. So I'm not so much focused on my actual playing ability. Obviously, I want to have a big impact. I want to be on the field again. But I want to be the person that everybody looks towards. I want to be the guy that represents the team, represents URI. I want to bring the energy. I want everybody to know when I'm on the field that I'm the one in charge. So that's my personal, I want to be the leader. I want it to be clear. As a team, I think with the amount of time that we've had together, I think we need to at least compete for playoffs. I think compete for playoffs should be step one. Once you are in playoffs, anything happens, as we know in sports. So I think that's where we go. I don't want to set our standards too high saying right now, obviously I want to win an A10. But to say I want to win an A10 is easy. So I think we need to lower that a little bit. We need to make playoffs. That is step one. Can easily be done with the talent that we have. That's where.
And there were a lot of young guys that were brought into the fold this year through the injuries. I mean, kind of talking that Birmingham's not really young, but I mean, like, he was a guy that was sort of on the offset that was brought in, like when Isak got hurt. And so you kind of look at some of these guys. Do you expect a lot of these younger guys to continue to make serious steps forwards next year?
Most definitely. Most definitely. I think everybody on our team currently has a really good mindset. And before even next year, I think we're looking forward towards spring to have a season, or at least a little season, to see when we're not injured what we're truly capable of. I mean, we only saw it for 6 games at the beginning of the year, but they were very good 6 games. So I think that's our first step as a team.
And so what do you have in store for the offseason for you? A little bit of time to relax and be...
Right now, relax, and then spring we're ramping up training again a couple of days a week, and then we'll have like 5-6 scrimmages. So I think that's going to be our time to see what we're about. Finally.
Any opponents set for any scrimmages?
I don't know, but it's usually some local teams, so I bet it'll be Bryant, UMass, some teams that have some quality. So I think it'll be a good test, but I think it's going to be a time for us to show we're truly capable of.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. I, for one, am very excited to see where this team moves on to next year. But, Max, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
This is very informative. As one of my favorite teams to work with on campus,
Thank you.
I was disappointed to see how this season went, but I feel like that there is way more to the story than just the record. There was so much that went on behind the scenes, so much positive work that was done, that I feel like that next year, even though the expectations are probably going to be a little bit lower, I still feel like that there's a lot of room to grow, and there's going to be a lot of talent that the team will have at their disposal to really achieve some great things.
It's going to be amazing.
I'm very much excited to see that. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's episode of Marks Remarks. We are going to be having Chris Tavarone on next week, captain from the URI men's track and field program. So that's going to be a fun interview. So everybody, tune in, same time next Friday, 3 to 4 p.m., and I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.